We all know the Pokemon Company hasn't produced the best quality products on the Nintendo Switch. Sword and Shield was kinda bland, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl was a shell worse than what the original was based on, Pokemon Legends Arceus was really good, I like that one a lot, and so was Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, while providing a fun gameplay experience, was still a rushed, glitchy polygon mess that still hasn't been fixed to this day, despite half the DLC already out and selling more along the way. I've been pretty disappointed with Pokemon, and I was not at all excited to see Detective Pikachu Returns on the Nintendo Switch. It just looked as awful and last gen as previous games, and I really didn't have any faith in it. Not to mention, it wasn't going to be cheap, and it was going to cost $50. $50 for what looks like a leftover 3DS game. And I'm not entirely being mean with calling it a 3DS game either. This game was originally going to be on the last gen console, but it was made at the tail end of the system, and the devs just sat there and shelved the project, just saving it for a rainy day. Near the possible end of the Switch's lifetime is the perfect time to release this Paldean treasure of a game. I was this close to not buying it, and not dealing with this game. But a part of me still stupidly had some faith in this franchise, especially with its spin-offs. Pokemon Snap is still one of their best games on the Switch. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Remake looks pretty good, and Arceus, while not perfect, was still a gem of a game that surprised me and others. I was hoping that Detective Pikachu would too. Needless to say, I booted up Detective Pikachu Returns, and it wasn't long until I realized I should have just thrown my money into the toilet.
I sure wish somebody would bring me some coffee.
This game is abysmal. I am bored, unimpressed, and frustrated with Detective Pikachu Returns. To call it a game is absolutely criminal and an insult to all interactive media. No one should purchase it, or else be forced upon the most tedious game you will ever play. We shall detect and go in detail about why this game is a stinker, examining the evidence of why it's so deplorable and why you should avoid it at all cost. Let's talk about why Detective Pikachu Returns should have stayed a closed case. We start the game with our main characters, Tim Goodman and Detective Pikachu, getting medals from the city for keeping the peace or whatever in the first game. In case you don't know, Detective Pikachu and Tim can talk to each other, but only Tim can understand the Pokemon, with Pikachu sounding like a gruff detective who can drink coffee. God, imagine what hearing him all day would be like.
Tim, what are you doing? We gotta get up and solve the case. But after I get some fresh-baked coffee, I gotta enjoy every last savor of it. The smell, the taste, the bitterness of non-specific brand black coffee. Oh yeah. Why can't you talk to me again, Tim?
The ceremony is immediately ruined by a Corviknight going berserk and flying around the festivities. Quick, someone find a Tinkaton! Right off the bat, you see the flaws of this game, as the road is closed and the tutorial begins. And what is causing the damage that they must heavily close the road? An unconscious P-Dove. Yep, this giant, obviously evil buff cop closed the road, stopped people from getting to work, closing access to the city because a tiny P-Dove passed out in the streets. Great use of taxpayer resources in Rhyme City. So naturally, it's up to us, a kid and his Pokemon, to save the day by talking to other P-Doves and Pokemon and seeing how we can get that bird to move. This is the whole game, isn't it? This is it. This is everything. I did it. I spent $50 just so I could talk to pigeons. This is not a joke. The goal is to interview both people and Pokemon, as Tim can talk to the people and Pikachu interprets the Pokemon. The game is essentially a visual novel, but for babies. You interview everyone and learn about all the clues going on, and then piece them all together to find out what's rightfully happening. You figure it out and bam! Move on to the next section of clues. Rinse and repeat for about 8 to 10 hours. Riveting. So let's start with an easy target with criticizing Pokemon games. The graphics. I know, the sky is blue, grass is green, graphics are bad in modern Pokemon games. All stuff you have heard before. But honestly, it's not that Pokemon that look too bad. I mean, they don't look great, but they're moving. And you can't say that for a few of the other games. No, it's not the Pokemon that look the worst. It's the people. They look so soulless and bland, like characters from a bad mobile game that are probably gonna pop up in a YouTube ad. Their hair doesn't move, they barely do any idle animations, the lip syncing never matches. I don't think any of them even blink. They feel really rushed and just like an afterthought, and it just throws everything off, especially comparing them to the Pokemon. If they looked like trainers in the games, that would make a lot more sense and maybe even be stylized and cool. But no, we get these lifeless dolls. As for the Pokemon themselves, they are wildly inconsistent. Some of them have magnificent animations, whether they be idle or actually move animations. Oh my god, that's so weird. And some look genuinely amazing with new models specifically for this game. Others look about just as bad as they do in modern Pokemon games. It's incredibly inconsistent and just comes across as lazy. Some of these are cute and they did make me smile, but it wasn't nearly enough to call this game visually appealing. This game looks old, there's clipping everywhere, the humans and Pokemon clash instead of complementing each other. And yes, if a Pokemon has to do a huge animation that changes the scenery, you won't see it. It instead will fade to black, you'll hear a sound effect, and then something will change. It's 2023, why are you still doing this? You save the Pidove crisis and then move on with the story. We get some flashbacks of what happened in the first game, and there's a cheeky reference of how they made a movie out of their experience. That's nothing like what happened. Ha ha ha! Isn't that funny? The movie that's better than you isn't part of the continuity. Ha ha ha! Shut up! You may notice that voices are coming out of these characters, and there is this thing called voice acting that is rare with Pokemon.
A missing jewel, and now Cramorant's full belly.
What are you thinking, Pikachu?
Audible words! Don't let them touch the baby! I have no idea why, but this is the franchise where they wanted Pokemon to have voice acting. I'm glad because it's something that should have been in Pokemon a long time ago. But why is it here and not in any of the mainline games? And again, it's not throughout the entire game. Mostly big important cutscenes, and then it goes back to text. But that's fine! Scarlet and Violet had important, slightly better cutscenes like this, but they didn't have any voices, so why does this one get the special treatment? Do we need to hear the voice of a talking caffeine-addicted Pikachu that badly?
Hearing my voice is the most important thing. I am Detective Pikachu after all. My name's on the box. I'm the main character. You don't matter, Tim. You never did. You're just some kid in a sweater who keeps asking about his dad.
As for the quality of the voice acting, they range from meh to awful. Some of these line deliveries are god-awful. Like, did you get the interns to record it in the bathroom or something?
The incident occurred at the dentist residence, the mansion down the street. Sorry, but Brad is waiting for me. I'll go ahead and meet up with you there.
That is how humans talk, right? Beep boop 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 bop. The best acting, if you could call it that, is done by the main duo. Although they even sound like they're kind of phoning it in too. Tim always sounds out of it, like he's voicing to collect his paycheck, constantly questioning everything that's going on. And Detective Pikachu, who sounds like a typical deep-voiced gruff detective, doesn't really have a character other than that. He just seems like he's there to tell bad jokes, or make silly quips, or ask for coffee.
So much for my coffee.
Also, Detective Pikachu himself just seems kinda pointless. You have not one, but two buttons specifically to get him to talk. Just cause one isn't enough! The first one is a hint system, which makes sense in a game like this. This game is incredibly easy, but if you do get stuck for whatever reason and can't figure out the clues that are forming right in front of you, it makes sense to have it here, at least for the kids. The other button just makes Pikachu talk. Just in case you didn't get enough of Pikachu, you can press a button as many times as you want, just to hear his opinion on, I don't know.
You know, Tim, wanna know how I like my coffee? Some people like sugar, or mocha or whatever the heck. But me, I'm a simple Pikachu. I like it black, baby, as dark as my soul. Let's talk about politics, Tim.
Anyway, the story continues and you get started with your first real case, which is finding a diamond or something from a local millionaire. It got stolen and like a cliche, everyone assumes the butler did it. And this is when I realized a fatal flaw of Detective Pikachu. The pacing is horrendous. These levels in this game go on for way too long. It can get really repetitive when it comes to talking to people, solving the case, talking to people, picking the right clue, and it just happens over and over, and it just drags like Pikachu after too much coffee. It just feels like the game goes on and on. Nothing but the same line of dialogue, which often repeats itself, by the way. No character building dialogue, no gameplay to vary up things, just text everywhere. But random, Detective Pikachu Returns is one of those visual novels. Do you hate visual novels? No, hypothetical audience member, I actually really enjoy visual novels. But there's one thing that makes or breaks any visual novel: the writing. Some of the writing in Ace Attorney, Coffee Talk, even Doki Doki Literature Club have made me want to read paragraph after paragraph, dialogue after dialogue in games. Text that is interesting, that shows change of character, that grips me with every word. Also, there's a few good books that do that too. The writing in Detective Pikachu is written for toddlers. Actually, no. I know a few toddler books that are more literate than this. Dialogue either repeats or comes off as completely unnatural. The reason we care about visual novels is to learn about these characters and get sucked into the story they plan to tell. Maybe even read a few funny lines or quips by the characters. But no, the dialogue feels first draft at best. Just everything dryly told, no flavor to it. It's like a bland idiot sandwich that Gordon Ramsay would shove right into a cook's face.
What are you? An idiot. Pikachu!
No subtleties, no flavor, just straight up boring. Even Pikachu's funny lines aren't interesting enough. No one in this town is interesting. The humans have the charm of sandpaper. Actually, I feel I could have a nice cup of tea with Sandpaper and his pal Wood Chippings, and it would impact me much more than this game ever could! Did they even try? Did they just write something in the break room during their off time and they were like, let's call it a day? Combine that with the pacing and them dragging their feet with every possible plot point, every single thing that they need to solve. Having to interview these digital avatars that make cardboard more interesting and doing it over and over again, nothing changing, it's just so infuriating! And it really doesn't help that Tim moves really slow. And how do I know he moves so slow that even the devs got sick of it? The devs added a run button in a visual novel. And by run, I mean it just makes you move faster. Like, it's literally pressing the speed button in the emulator. You change the settings and then bam, Tim is speeding down the highway. I would say it makes things go by faster, but it really doesn't. We still have to go through pages of lifeless dialogue, and you could have it auto-playing or just fast forward it all, but what's the point of playing the game? Just turn it off! Okay, there are a few things that break the monotony a tad, but really not much. You do have times where you have to look for evidence, which is essentially an I Spy minigame, also for babies. You just find anything interactable and then you hear Tim and Pikachu talk about it. Then find everything and move on. You also have these very short QuickTime events where Pikachu does something and you have to press the button like it's a Mario Party game. Only it's a lot less satisfying. I'd rather have my palms bleed from controlling the stick. And at the end of each chapter, things get stupidly dramatic as you reveal all the things you discovered as a detective, as if it isn't common knowledge. But even then, with all the dramatic pauses, it's still boring. And not only are these facts insanely obvious most of the time, but the acting is usually so terrible with these accusations, you've seen soap operas that are more subtle than this. And what's with the weird camera close-ups?
The culprit jotted down their whole plan. They wanted to frame Mr. Barnes for the crime.
Then that would mean Barnes is innocent.
So who's the real culprit?
I think it was Pikachu that committed the murder. One thing that makes Detective Pikachu different is the use of Pokemon. Throughout the adventure, Detective Pikachu will team up with other Pokemon to help him solve the case. Some of these include Growlithe, who you ride on, Galarian Darmanitan, who you ride on, and Luxray, who you ride on. Detective Pikachu is busy, jeez!
Ride, my valiant steed! Take me to the nearest coffee shop.
Growlithe can sniff and track items, Darmanitan can break things, and Luxray can see through walls. And all of them get used decently well in the chapters, if it wasn't so tedious. You sniff slowly trying to find where you need to go, which makes it not only tedious, but you can pretty much predict where you have to go without using Growlithe. You break everything in your path with Darmanitan, but that gets boring after a while. And Luxray exposes the guards walking into walls. That's kind of funny. They vary up the game a bit, but not much. And it still drags. Just drags while controlling Pokemon. Although this kind of leads to my first of two positives about Detective Pikachu. The Pokemon are written slightly better than the humans. When it's just Pikachu talking to Pokemon and you see their text, they can be a bit more interesting. I know, saying that anything is more interesting than these mobile NPC rejects isn't much, but they have some form of personality. It feels like the writer is at least trying to do something with these Pokemon and give them somewhat of a narrative voice. It's no mystery dungeon, but it's something. And at this point, I was craving anything from the game. God, this plot is all over the place. They find the diamond in the second level, but it gets stolen again, whatever. And the second level takes place in a temple, where you have to find berries to advance or something. I don't care. I don't care about this. They're trying to get someone out of the temple while breaking into the temple. Darmanitan eats Pikachu. Please don't ever put Pikachu in your mouth again.
I've been in the belly of the beast, Tim. You don't want to go in there. See the things I've seen. Oh, God.
And again, the levels just drag and drag, repeating themselves as much as I am repeating to you how boring this is. They keep stating the obvious, something that a 2-year-old could put together, but yet they need multiple shards of evidence to figure out. The last chapter I was able to stomach was chapter 3, where Pikachu gets arrested. No, I'm not kidding. Literally, we are walking to the coffee shop, and the Popo just detained Pikachu. Lock him up and put him in a cage.
I have the right to remain silent. I want to speak to my lawyer. You can't keep me locked up like this. This is police corrupt.
There's a whole thing where Pikachu has to work with other Pokemon that are trapped in a cell. He's literally sneaking around the office, literally venting and being a sussy baka like Among Us. I never thought I'd say that in a Pokemon game. All while Tim is in the town trying to gather any clues. This should be exciting. This is a prison break level. I love prison break levels. The dialogue and writing continues to stall, and it just makes everything not worth figuring out. Everything's already obvious, so why work for it? We even learned some conspiracies that take way too long to solve, and by the time we figure it out, it lost all its shock value. It doesn't matter. This is a good time to mention the second thing I really enjoy about this game. The music. I don't know who composed this game, but they really decided to go hard on some of these tracks. These songs are catchy, set the mood for the scene, set up the atmosphere, or just plain fire. I mean, you've been listening to the songs from the game in the background of the entire video, so you be the judge. Pokemon is known for having some excellent tunes, and even this game has some great tracks. And I even find myself humming them, or really getting into them or having them stuck in my head. They are genuinely good, but no matter how fun a song can be, a turd with good music is still a turd. And I cannot stand this turd anymore! I tried doing as much as I can, but it was just getting to the point where I struggled pressing the A button. I couldn't listen to Detective Pikachu anymore. I couldn't read any of his dialogue. I couldn't listen to him talk about coffee. I'm just done at this point. I tried to finish this game, but I just couldn't do it. I really wanted to see every minute, judge it thoroughly, maybe hoping that at some point it would surprise me and that I would eventually enjoy it. It is rare that I cannot physically get through a game, but Detective Pikachu Returns crosses that threshold. It's a game that made me miss playing Brilliant Diamond. It's a game that made me think, you know what? Maybe Amiibo Festival isn't that bad. You do not know how bad that this game has to be for me to consider that. In a long sea of Pokemon games, this one is the worst. It is devoid of fun and has nothing to offer for it. And the funny thing is, I'm looking at other reviewers and they say it's fine. They say it's enjoyable to kids, captivating. 7 out of 10? Did we play the same game? I can't stand this. How could a kid with less attention span than me even last an hour of this garbage? I genuinely hope that Pokemon can't top how awful and uninteresting this visual novel is. I give up on it. I'm done with it. I don't care what happened to Pikachu. He probably died of a caffeine overdose or something.
Tim, I'm going to the great coffee shop in the sky. The light. So bright. I need a bolt of brilliance. Ah! I'm
So many Pikachu die every day of caffeine consumption. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel now to guarantee that no Pikachu will ever drink coffee ever again and suffer the same fate. Detective Pikachu was truly a disappointment, even to the fans of the series, if there are any. If you like it, watch the movie instead. It's a lot better, more entertaining. I also think there's a fun short you can find on YouTube. Even playing the first game on 3DS, I heard, is probably better. And I hope this solves the mystery of why you shouldn't play Detective Pikachu Returns.
I figured it out! Bolt of brilliance!
I'm not gonna lie, this one was very exhausting to make and to play, and I really do mean it that you shouldn't play this. But what did you think of Detective Pikachu Returns? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the like button and stay tuned for more videos.